Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Nemaha Valley Outdoors podcast. I'm your host, Ben Doden. Today I'm going to talk about my first, not Boone and Crockett, my first Pope and Young whitetail from back in 2019. Um, that year was a hell of a year for me. That was the year that I met Brittany. That was the year I really buckled down and took deer hunting something serious. Um, that year, I remember I had a lot of really nice deer on camera that year. I had more nice deer on camera for no more property than I hunt. I had more deer on camera than what you would expect. I remember I had 5 bucks all peaking over the 150s range, which is pretty dang good, at least in my opinion. And it really left my options open as far as getting that shooter buck. There was one that had really caught my eye, and he was very tall and fairly wide, 4x4. He, I probably would have aged him at about 3.5, 4.5 years old, so he still had a little bit of growth, but definitely a deer that I would have taken given the opportunity. He had actually winded me a couple times. I remember I'd gone out early season right after the crops got out to where I had access to the field and I'd gone off work early. So I rushed home, hurry up, changed, and headed out to the deer stand. So the first time he winded me, I was sitting in my stand. I was facing south, and I had a south wind. I thought, okay, this will be pretty good given where they usually bed down at. And I don't know where he was bedded for the day. He was not where I thought he was going to be because I remember looking over to the east and I saw his antlers coming through. So I grabbed my bow and I got off the hook and I could just feel my heart thudding and thudding. I started shaking real bad. And he ended up not coming through the timber. He stuck to that field edge and got behind me, winded me. And the the neat thing about those big mature bucks is they know better. They're not gonna catch wind and run off with their tail in the air. They're gonna just keep cruising. And I knew he winded me because he stopped and he looked at me. And I had no opening behind me to try and plug him with an arrow. But he stopped, he looks at me, and then he kind of dips his head down and he walks off slowly with his head lowered. So it's like he knew. He just knew how big he was. So that was really exciting. And the next day was almost a repeat. I again got off work early. We were doing it was an in-house training of some sorts that week. And so I got off early again. We got out of class and again I hustled home because the wind had switched directions to more of a east northeast wind. So I was like, well, this is gonna just work absolutely perfect. This deer is gonna come right in the same way. Those bucks are fairly predictable. And I'm setting up in my stand and I'm looking to the east, I'm looking to the east, I'm looking to the east, and I hear hooves behind me. And I turn around and it's this little fork buck just hanging out in the grass. Okay, well, I better keep an eye on him. Beyond him, here comes the big 4x4 again. Big, tall 4x4 coming walking down. It's like, oh boy, that's not good. That is perfectly wrong for everything that I want to do right now. And sure enough, he caught wind and he dipped back into the trees, into the thick cedars to the west, and never to be seen again. I never saw on camera again. I never saw him in person again. And that was that was really demoralizing to have that happen, especially before peak rut. But fast forward now to just the week before rifle season. I take that week off every single year to strictly go and bow hunt super hard. If the sun's up, I'm in that deer stand. But I remember in 2019, the weather was very odd. It was kind of like the springtime, where you wake up and it's cold, you kind of need a coat. And then around midday, it gets warm, and now you need to take off layers. And no clouds. There was never any cloud cover, if I remember correctly. No, I take that back. There was one day where the cloud cover, and I think it was Tuesday of that week. Tuesday or Wednesday. It was sometime midweek. There was cloud cover and a little bit of rain with it. But anyway, going through the week, no cloud cover, full moon, deer were extremely, extremely active at night, or at least they just weren't active during the day where I was. And so I wasn't really seeing a lot of deer. None of the guys back at deer camp were seeing a lot of deer. And we get up to Friday. And I woke up and I was pretty bummed out. I was pretty beat down from a hard week of hunting. And I had texted my dad and I said, "Hey, are you going out?" He goes, "You know what? No, I'm not gonna go hunting. Not seeing deer right now. I got better things I can spend my day doing." Okay. And then he asked, "Well, are you going out?" I said, "Well, I can't kill him from the couch, and I took the week off to go deer hunting, so that's what I'm gonna do." In the time it took this conversation to happen, the sun had already started peeking up. And so when I got to the truck, I pedaled to the metal, man. I mean, I was full board trying to get to that deer stand before I lost any more daylight. And I get to the stand, I get my bow up there, everything's knocked up, and I'm ready to rock and roll. I'm excited for my day. Sort of. I wasn't expecting to see no deer. I I came to what many many hunters these days do, and I soaked into my phone. Just texting Brittany here and there, scrolling Facebook a lot, playing a couple games. Well, I kept scrolling Facebook, and off to the east of me, I hear something walking, and I thought it was just a squirrel. So I just took a quick glance. Every squirrel you hear, you always think is a deer, but I that year I always assumed it was going to be a squirrel. And I look over, and through the trees, all I saw was spikes walking through. It's like, man, how disappointing is that? Like the fourth deer I see all week, and it's a spike buck. So I didn't pay it much mind. I go back to my phone, and I'm kind of am what I am for a little bit. After about 10 minutes of staring down at the screen, I think to myself, you know what? I should really probably pay attention. And sure enough, I look up and I'm looking around, and it wasn't more than a couple minutes later. And I hear something coming charging through the woods. Something is fired up. And I'm looking through the brush. I'm peeking. And all I see is antlers. I was like, oh boy, that's a big deer. And he came into this clearing, and I hit him with that classic, "Meow," and he took another 4 or 5 steps. And I didn't get like a great look at him. I didn't look at him extremely closely. I just knew it was a big bodied deer with big antlers. And I was already at full draw, but with where I was waited for him to stop at, I I didn't expect him to stop as close as he did. So I was actually a handful of pins high on him. And I hurried up and I dropped the bow down to him and I let that arrow go. And I just hear thud. You know that thud you hear with the bow. And I just I hung my bow up. He took off running. I hang my bow up and I put my hands in my face. I thought I absolutely whiffed that shot. It's like, that was a 20-yard shot. How did I whiff it? This was before I went to the Luminox. This was actually the driving factor in me getting the Luminox was, or I shouldn't say the, but it was definitely one of the driving factors. I hang my bow up and I put my face, my hands. I could not believe I missed. I was just absolutely crushed. I was ready to pack it up. And then I hear something crash behind me. I stand and I'm peeking through the trees and everything, and I see his butt just hanging out, laying down in the corn. It's like, did I hit him? Surely and I'm all wound up still from everything, just feeling the adrenaline and the heart pumping. I I couldn't believe it. So I reach into my book bag that I got for hunting, and I pull out my binoculars and I glass it. And yeah, there's his butt. And just ahead of those, believe it or not, they're the antlers just sticking out over the corn stalks. Massive animal, massive animal. And I did a complete 180. I went from being absolutely devastated to being on top of the world, and you not pulling me down. That was such a great, great feeling to capitalize on a deer that caliber. When I kind of got myself gathered, I called Brittany. So I was so excited. I had to tell her. And it's like, I did it. I did it. And she was really excited for me. She asked, is it a big one? She's whispering with me on the phone. I don't know why she was whispering. She was probably at work at that point. It was about 8:30 in the morning. Oh, he's a big one. It's a huge deer. He goes, well, make sure you take lots of pictures and send them to me, of course. And I called Dad. Next, after I hang up with Brittany, I called Dad. I go, well, while you were sitting at home doing nothing, someone had to be out here killing big bucks. He didn't believe it. He says, this isn't one of those things where you're telling me you killed a big buck and I come out there and it's a dink, is it? No. I'm looking at him from the tree and he is huge. And Dad starts getting excited. All right, well, don't fall down the tree, you know. He told me he was going to meet me at the truck. So I get everything packed up and I start heading up the hill. And it timed out about perfect to the time he pulled up to the time I got back to the truck. And he comes out and goes, well, what'd you get? Oh, you'll see. I wasn't giving him any more details because he's just going to keep giving me a hard time. It was, I bet you killed a scrub. You probably just took a coal buck, didn't you? No, I promise you I did not. And we load up into my truck and we go down into the field to go get this deer. And he's still not seeing it, still not seeing it. I'm not seeing the size you're talking about. Oh, just wait. I tell him, just wait. It's going to hit you. And I pull up about to the deer and I kind of spit the pickup off a little bit. And I get out, he gets out. He goes, oh my God, Ben. How did you manage that one? Oh man, I don't know. I got lucky. I got really lucky. And he was blown away by the sheer size of this deer. When I got a look at him, I thought, I don't have any pictures of him. He's new. And that was kind of strange because I thought I had a pretty good track of all the deer in the area. But anyway, we get lots of pictures taken and get them loaded up. And of course, I got to go show off to who's left at deer camp that, you know, I not only got the only buck of the week, I got the biggest buck of the week, which isn't hard to do when you get the only one, I guess. That's not very good brag, is it? So, after I'm done driving around showing people, because I was extremely proud of that animal and just the patience and perseverance that it took to actually get him, is even though I take that full week off, I'm still hunting pretty much from the second the crops come out to when I either run out of tags I or season is over, whichever happens first. It's usually when I run out of tags, but neither here nor there. So I call up local taxidermists over there at Wild Country Taxidermy. He does great work. I've never been disappointed by any of his work. I take all my stuff to him. It takes a little bit to get back sometimes, but the wait is well worth the final product. So I took it over there and he skinned it up and I got it. We ended up processing the meat the next day. The year, I think I got him back that following June. Not the following June, the June after. So it'd be about a year and a half later, I got the buck back. And that sounds like a long time, but he is a one-man operation and is he gets a lot of business. So I understand the way and I'm extremely patient because I know what I'm getting is gonna last until, my future kids have kids and their kids have kids. His products are gonna last a lifetime and then some. And I remember I went over there to get them out and I drove down to Cook to show dad and I knocked on the door and I just held the deer up right to the window for when he opened the door and he jumped back. I don't know how many feet. The damn deer learned how to knock. But he was really excited about it. I ended up throwing a tape on that deer that night, and if I remember right, he scored 144 and 6/8. So right there, close to the 150 mark. After I got him hanging up, I built a podium, and after I got him hanging on that, and I was looking at him, I realized, this buck actually, he looks kind of familiar. So I went all the way back to 2019 and I was looking at my trail cam pictures and come to find out this buck that was he was truthfully at time of kill he was a 4x5, but the reason I didn't recognize him out the gates, he had one of his brow tines broke off and he had a G4 broke off. He was originally a 5x6, just absolutely massive animal. And looking at the time length, gross score on him absolutely would have been 160s just from the sheer amount of length of the tines. And, we don't ever talk about deductions because who wants to do that? But that was an extremely memorable and extremely fun hunt for me. The build up to it was honestly the best. 4 or 5 days and not really seeing deer when that's kind of the week you live for out of the year, that's rough. And then you end that week on that kind of a note is huge for a deer hunter, just absolutely huge. And I ate on him for about next year and a half ish. Once Brittany moved in, we obviously started cooking deer meat more. But no, he fed me well and he's on my wall. And I think about that hunt quite frequently. So I kind of wanted to come on here and tell you guys that story. And if you liked it, awesome. Go on ahead, give this a like and subscribe to the page. I'd really, really appreciate that. So thanks guys. We'll talk to you next time.